20 doctors failed to save a billionaire. Until a janitor, what they missed. Stay with me till the very end, and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far the truth really spreads. The storm outside beat against the city, but inside the luxury hospital suite, worth millions, Victor Hale, one of the richest men in the city, lay slipping away. 20 doctors searched for answers, but the truth stood silent in the shadows. Angela Morris, once a brilliant chemistry student, now the woman mopping their floors, saw the marks they refused to see. Invisibility gave her vision, but no one would listen. What would you have done in his place? Victor Hale lay on the bed, his chest heaving in shallow bursts, while machines screamed for help. Doctors circled him like hunters who had lost the trail, their words clipped and sharp. Reynolds' voice cut through them, low and final, saying there was nothing left to try. It felt like a door slamming shut, the sound of defeat in a place built for saving lives. Angela Morris pushed her mop along the corner of the room, her body bent low, invisible to the chaos, but her eyes were not on the floor. They were locked on Victor's hands, the strange yellow stains spreading at his nails, the thinning of his once thick hair. Her heart clenched as memory surged, sharp and uninvited. A lecture hall years ago, the professor's voice steady, yellow nails, hair loss, nerve tremors, classic signs of thallium. The words had seemed distant once. Now they lived on the body in front of her. No one noticed her staring, and that was expected. She was the shadow in the corner, the one meant to clean and keep quiet. Yet her pulse raced faster than the monitors, the old training blazing back like fire to dry kindling. These were not random symptoms. They were the marks of a poison eating him alive. The thought was so clear it shook her. She gripped the mop tighter, her knuckles white, because she knew something none of the doctors in the room dared to see. To them, Victor was a dying man slipping through their hands. To her, he was a living equation, the pieces fitting too perfectly to ignore. She wanted to speak, to cut through their sterile language, with the truth clawing inside her. But the uniform on her body reminded her of her place. So she whispered inside, almost like a vow, "They see a body fading. I see the shadow of thallium, and I cannot unsee it." Angela had not always been the woman who pushed a mop down long hospital corridors. There was a time when professors called her the star of the chemistry department, the one who solved problems others gave up on. She had earned her scholarship at Johns Hopkins through talent and endless nights of study, her future wide and promising. Then the phone call came, the one that shattered every plan. Her parents were gone in an accident that left her holding the weight of 3 younger siblings. Lectures and labs were replaced by grocery lists and overdue bills. She left her classes in the middle of the semester, promising she would return when things settled, but she never did. Life asked for survival, not dreams. Years passed, and her siblings grew under the roof she kept steady. She worked any job that paid, until this one, cleaning the hospital floors at night, gave her just enough stability to hold everything together. People passed by her without noticing, treating her uniform as if it were a wall. Yet inside, the same sharp mind remained, hungry to learn, unwilling to let knowledge slip away. Angela found ways to feed it. She borrowed textbooks from the library, read medical journals online during breaks, and scribbled notes on scraps of paper tucked in her pocket. While her hands scrubbed surfaces, her mind reviewed formulas and patterns. The habit never left her. It became her way of staying alive, of reminding herself she was more than what the world chose to see. To the doctors, she was invisible, a shadow moving in and out without sound. To herself, she was still that girl who loved the logic of molecules and the mysteries of toxins. Every patient she saw, every symptom chart left lying open, was another silent lecture for her. She memorized details, built connections, and noticed what others dismissed. And so, on nights like this one, when Victor Hale's body betrayed signs no one else cared to piece together, Angela's eyes sharpened. She could not forget what she had learned, no matter how far she had been pushed away from the life she once dreamed of. She lived in silence, yes, but silence gave her a vantage point. While others overlooked, she observed. While they ignored, she remembered. She was the invisible woman who saw everything. Jefferson Cole arrived with his usual calm smile, the kind that suggested loyalty even when Angela knew better. In his hand was the same sleek black jar, polished to a shine. He placed it gently on the bedside table, telling the nurses that Victor always preferred this imported cream, that it soothed his skin better than anything else. They nodded without question. Victor had used it for years, part of his wealthy habits, and no one thought twice about it. Angela's rag moved over the counter, her head lowered, but her eyes tracked every detail. She had watched this scene too many times. The jar would appear, the nurses would apply the cream out of routine, and within hours Victor's body would falter, his heart rhythm weaker, his strength draining further. The pattern was too precise to dismiss as coincidence. Her mind reached back, unbidden, to the classroom she once belonged to. She could still see the slide on the projector, the professor's steady voice explaining how thallium passed easily through the skin. A poison without taste or smell. A killer that mimicked natural illness until it was too late. Yellowed nails, hair falling in clumps, tremors that crawled from the inside out. The very signs she had already seen on Victor's body. Her breath caught in her throat, the truth settling like ice in her chest. The jar was no luxury. It was a weapon dressed in elegance, hiding in plain sight. She wanted to shout, to knock it from the table, to demand they stop. But the weight of her uniform pinned her down. She was the cleaner, not the doctor. The woman expected to polish surfaces, not uncover poisons. Jefferson's voice lingered in the room, smooth and confident, reminding the staff to keep Victor comfortable with his favorite cream. His tone carried the authority of a trusted friend, and no one questioned it. Angela forced her hand to keep moving the rag in small circles. Her body mechanical, but her mind a storm. She knew with every fiber of her being what was happening, and the knowledge felt heavier than anything she had ever carried. Angela could not keep the thought buried any longer. That night, after she finished wiping down the monitors, she slipped a small folded note onto the corner of the patient chart. Her handwriting was neat, but firm. It said only what mattered. Check for thallium poisoning. The signs match. She walked away with her heart pounding, hoping someone would read it with an open mind. The next morning she passed by as the doctors gathered. She heard the sound of laughter before she even stepped close. One of them held the note up like a joke passed around in class. Reynolds spoke with that dry tone of his, saying the cleaning staff had started giving diagnostic opinions now. The others chuckled, some shaking their heads. Not one of them thought the words deserved a second of real attention. Angela kept moving, her face calm, but inside she felt the sting like glass pressed against her chest. She wanted to shout that she was not guessing, that every symptom fit perfectly, that the man was being poisoned right in front of them. But the uniform on her body made her invisible. They saw the mop, not the mind that once solved chemical equations faster than anyone else in her year. The humiliation burned, yet under it was something sharper, certainty. She could feel the truth pulsing in her veins. They had dismissed her, but she knew what she had seen. The pattern was too exact to be a coincidence. She was more sure in that moment than of anything else in her life. As she wheeled her cart down the hall, she whispered to herself to keep from breaking. They will not listen because of what I wear, not because of what I know. Her voice was steady, even as her hands trembled. Pain lived in her silence, but so did determination. They had buried her words, but the truth remained alive inside her, waiting for the moment it could no longer be ignored. Angela waited for her chance like a thief in her own workplace. When the nurse stepped out to answer a call, she moved quickly. Her fingers unscrewed the jar, careful not to disturb the surface. With a small scoop, she slipped some cream into a sterile container hidden in her pocket, then sealed the jar as if nothing had touched it. By the time the nurse returned, Angela's hands were already busy wiping the counter, her face calm though her heart hammered in her chest. That night, she locked herself inside the small supply closet at the end of the hall. The air smelled of bleach and ammonia, sharp and suffocating. On the metal shelf, She laid out the tools she had scavenged, a glass beaker from an old kit, strips of foil, baking soda stolen from the staff kitchen, sanitizer solutions that could act as crude reagents. Her hands trembled as she began, but muscle memory guided her. She had done this before, in a different life, in a lab that smelled of chalk and ink instead of chemicals and floor wax. She mixed the cream with the solutions, her eyes straining under the dim light. At first nothing happened. The liquid sat stubborn and unchanged, mocking her with silence. Her chest tightened, fear rising like a wave. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe the memories of lectures had blurred, and she had risked everything for nothing. For one crushing moment, she felt the floor fall from beneath her. Then, as she stirred again, a faint shimmer spread across the mixture. The metallic tint deepened, darkening in a way she recognized instantly. The air seemed to leave her lungs. The professor's words echoed in her ears, clear as the day she first heard them. Thallium, a poison that revealed itself only under the right conditions, and she had forced it to show its face. Angela sank back against the wall, the beaker shaking in her hands. Relief did not come. Only the weight of certainty pressed down on her chest. She had uncovered the truth, but the truth was dangerous. Proof in her pocket would not change the way the doctors saw her. To them, she was still the woman with the mop, not the one who solved the puzzle that had trapped them all. Later, at home, she stared into the mirror above her bathroom sink. Her reflection looked tired, but her eyes burned bright. She whispered questions into the empty room. Should she stay silent, keep her paycheck, keep her fragile stability? Or should she risk everything, knowing she could lose her job, her reputation, even her place in the only world that still tolerated her? She thought of her siblings, the years she had already given away to keep them alive. She thought of Victor, a man slipping closer to death with every passing hour. Her chest rose and fell, torn between fear and resolve. Then she pressed her hand flat against the glass, her reflection staring back like an accusation. A voice rose inside her, quiet but certain. If not you, then who? Angela straightened her shoulders, her decision no longer fragile. She would not let her knowledge rot in silence. She would risk her job, her security, even the last shreds of safety she had. The truth was burning too fiercely to be buried again. She whispered into the air, "Steady now. He will live. I will make them listen." The conference room was heavy with tension. Doctors stood around the table, charts spread open, their voices clipped as they argued about the next steps. Victor's numbers were dropping fast, and desperation filled the air. Reynolds raised his hand, cutting through the noise. He said they had tried everything, that the situation was slipping out of their control. His words were sharp, final, like a judge delivering a sentence. Then the door opened. Angela stepped inside, clutching a folder pressed against her chest. Every head turned toward her. For a moment no one spoke, as if her very presence was out of place. She took a slow breath and said the words that made the air crackle. "Victor Hale is being poisoned. Thallium." The room erupted in laughter and groans. One doctor muttered that the cleaning staff had gone mad. Reynolds's face hardened, red with anger. He ordered security, his voice booming. But Angela did not step back. Her hand moved quickly, laying papers and notes onto the table, charts with symptoms written in her steady script. A small photo of her crude test, showing the reaction. She spoke clearly, pointing to the timeline she had pieced together. She told them how the symptoms matched textbook cases of thallium, the yellow nails, the hair loss, the neuropathy creeping upward. She showed them how every downturn followed the arrival of the same imported cream. The words poured out, not frantic, but sure. Each sentence was a stone, building a wall too solid to ignore. The laughter faded. Reynolds slammed his hand against the table, calling it absurd. But Angela met his eyes, steady, unshaken. She told them she had been a chemistry student, trained in toxicology, forced to leave school but never forgetting what she learned. Her voice did not waver. She said, "This man was dying because no one had dared to look past their assumptions." Silence followed. broken only when Dr. Park leaned forward. His young voice was careful but firm. He said the evidence fit, that it explained everything the tests had missed. He asked, "Why not check?" Just once. His words hung in the room like a lifeline. For the first time, others nodded slowly, uncertainty cracking the wall of arrogance. Reynolds resisted, but the momentum had shifted. A nurse was sent running to the lab with samples from the cream and Victor's blood. Minutes crawled like hours. The room stood frozen, waiting. Then the door burst open. The nurse's voice trembled as she spoke. Positive for thallium, high levels. The room went still, as if sound itself had been ripped away. For weeks, the brightest minds had circled without answers, and now the truth had come from the woman who scrubbed their floors. Reynolds's jaw tightened, but his eyes betrayed the weight of defeat. Angela said nothing more. She had already said enough. Orders flew. Antidote protocols were rushed into motion. Nurses moved with urgent precision. Monitors began to shift, numbers climbing instead of falling. For the first time in weeks, Victor's condition stabilized. His heart held steady. His breathing grew stronger. The room exhaled all at once. Angela stepped back against the wall, her folder still clutched in her arms. No one was laughing now. They watched her differently, as if seeing her for the very first time. The woman they had dismissed had just saved a billionaire's life, and she had done it by refusing to let the truth stay buried. Victor's room no longer felt like a place of despair. The monitors hummed with steadier rhythms, his chest lifting with more strength than hours before. Doctors who had mocked Angela's words now stood quiet, humbled by the truth they had tried to bury. Even Reynolds, stiff and prideful, lowered his gaze. It was not just an admission of error, it was the surrender of arrogance before undeniable fact. But the story did not end with the diagnosis. Victor's legal team, always on standby, wasted no time. Within the hour they had filed urgent reports, and the FBI responded with the precision of habit. Agents arrived, sharp suits and sharp eyes, moving past the nurses as if the hospital had turned into a crime scene. They went straight to Jefferson Cole. His charm faltered the moment the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The plan to weaken Victor for business gain was laid bare for everyone to see. The room, once filled with dismissal, now pulsed with a different weight. Angela stood near the wall, her mop long forgotten, her shoulders squared. Victor stirred, his eyelids heavy but determined to open. His gaze swept past the doctors, past the machines, until it landed on her. His voice was rough, but his words carried like thunder in the silence. "Thank you for seeing what they did not." No one moved at first. The weight of his gratitude settled like a verdict. Then Dr. Park began to clap, a slow rhythm that broke the stillness. One by one the others joined, until the sound filled the entire room. The applause was not just for the life saved. It was for the woman who refused to remain invisible. Angela bowed her head slightly, letting the moment wash over her. She had been the shadow in the corner. Now she stood in the center, not because she demanded it, but because truth had carried her there. Weeks later, when Victor was strong enough to speak with clarity, he asked to see Angela. He told her he owed his life to her eyes and her courage, and that gratitude alone was not enough. He wanted to give her back what life had stolen. He announced the creation of a scholarship fund in her name, designed to send her back to school and finish the dream she had once laid down. The day she held the acceptance letter in her hands, Angela felt as though the ground beneath her had shifted. For nearly 20 years, she had lived in uniforms meant to hide her. Now, for the first time, she pulled on a white lab coat, not as a cleaner, but as a student stepping into her rightful place. The fabric felt heavy with meaning, and when she walked into the laboratory, her breath caught in her throat. The bright lights reflected off glass beakers and polished instruments. She touched the edge of the counter, tears pricking her eyes, overwhelmed by the memory of how close she had once been before life pulled her away. Her voice trembled as she whispered to herself. The dream was delayed, but it never died. In that moment, the years of invisibility faded, replaced by the quiet certainty that she belonged here. Angela stood taller, her eyes shining through the tears. She was no longer the woman sweeping in the background. She was a student again, reclaiming a life she thought was lost. And as she turned the first page of her notebook, she knew this was only the beginning of the future she had fought so hard to keep alive. 1 year later, Angela stood at the podium in a cap and gown, her white coat draped over her shoulders like a second skin. The room was filled with graduates and families, but all eyes were on her. She spoke softly, yet every word carried. She said that worth is not measured by the uniform you wear, but by the mind and heart you carry inside. She told them that sometimes the ones overlooked see the clearest truths. Her words lingered, filling the hall with a quiet weight. In the front row, her 3 younger siblings sat grown and proud, the children she once sacrificed everything for. Beside them, Victor Hale watched, healthier now, a faint smile resting on his face. He knew his life was the proof of her courage. He clapped first, and soon the sound swelled, wave after wave until the hall shook with applause. Angela's chest tightened as she looked out over the audience. For years she had been invisible, moving through the world unseen. Now she stood not as a shadow, but as a symbol of persistence and truth. She thought of the nights in cleaning closets, of tears shed in silence, of dreams she once thought buried forever. And she realized none of it had been wasted. She stepped down from the stage, her siblings rushing to her side, their arms wrapping around her. In that embrace was everything she had fought for. The applause roared on, Victor smiling wider in the crowd, and Angela's tears spilled freely at last. She had moved from unseen to unforgettable, her journey complete. From the night Angela was just a shadow with a mop to the day she stood in a white coat, her journey was more than saving one man's life. It was proof that compassion, courage, and the will to protect others can rewrite any destiny. Her story reminds us that family, love, and unseen sacrifice carry a power greater than wealth or status. And maybe, just maybe, it speaks to something in all of us, the belief that even the invisible can change the world. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. Let us hear your heart. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Emotional Echoes, where stories of resilience and hope find their voice. Thanks for listening.